Q&A time. And I was told to go to 7:30, 7:29. Now that is how it's done.
Just before we start on the questions, Garrett has the wireless microphone. So if you have a question to follow, just put your hand up so Garrett can track you for the next one.
Thank you. Did you say that the term special assessment no longer exists? It's now special levy?
Sure,
That's the word you've been using?
you bet.
Thank you.
I would just like to add to your list of reasons you might not want to take a loan. So if your corporation has a loan, then people who buy in your building often cannot get CMHC mortgaging or GE mortgaging because there's a risk. So that makes it more difficult to sell units in your building. The second one I would add is if they don't have a very big mortgage and the special assessment's huge, I have had cases where mortgages have walked away as well as the owner. And so then the corporation's left selling a unit to pay your debt. And sometimes you often don't make back what you assessed for, especially with all the interest rates by the time that's done.
So 2 interesting points. Yes, CMHC and GE. Frankly, if you wanted my opinion on what goes into those decisions when they say no to financing for a building, don't ask me. I have no idea. I've seen a bunch of clients that all of a sudden somehow got blacklisted, and it made absolutely no sense. Why would it matter to GE that so-and-so is amortizing their costs for a building envelope repair that'll last 40 years versus drilling down and special assessing owners and bankrupting a bunch? What would it matter? I don't know. It shouldn't go into it, but again, perhaps it's a risk. I've never seen any of the ones that I've been involved with come back and say that they were no longer insured.
Well, doesn't it matter if it goes into foreclosure?
Why?
Well, because they got to pay off that. Oh, right, they don't have to pay it off.
All you're paying off is an extra couple $100 a month. Right? If you're going into a unit foreclosure, what does it matter? Right? You're only paying an extra, $150 a month. And you've got a building that hopefully has had some significant repairs and improvements. Like, I've got one where they've spent millions of dollars, but you've got an old building that's now been totally refurbished. So beforehand, it had CMHC financing, but afterwards it wouldn't? Doesn't make any sense. That doesn't mean it might not happen. Again, I don't understand sometimes why they do those things. But interesting point. Any other questions, comments, concerns, gossip? What do you got?
Hang on, Lorraine. Hang on, just Garrett.
Hi.
Al would like you to stand up too.
No.
Good answer.
Do loan payments and the interest on the loan, are they considered operating expenses?
Yes,
Nothing to do with reserve?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
It's not the payments for your loan is not something that is paid for out of your reserve. It's not one of those things.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, would it be confusing? We as a corporation changed our bylaws so that we all went on the same fees rather than paying by unit factors.
Mm-hmm.
Would that become more complicated? Because you were saying owners would pay according to unit factors. So
No, not at all. So let's say that how many units are in your building?
30.
So let's say you had 30 units and you wanted to get a simple loan. Well, let's say that your corporation borrowed $500,000. 30 people are going to be paying an equal amount, a higher amount, to finance that loan. If you wanted to get that loan, and then you say, you know, but some people don't want it, some people do, right? So what I'd recommend is you just go around with a special resolution to adjust your bylaws for repayment, to state that everyone pays equally for all of the costs, except for the loan costs, which are allocated amongst those people that haven't prepaid. And so what you'd have, let's say you had half that prepaid and half that didn't. Everyone would pay equally for all of the costs except for the loan costs, which would only be tacked on separately to those people that haven't prepaid. And it's set out very clearly in the bylaws, so that if there was ever a special assessment or the need to recover those costs, it would only be assessed against those people that haven't already paid. Okay? In the front and then in the back.
Maybe I can talk loud enough. Section 28, reasonable and prudent, that applies to everything the board does, not just borrowing money. Is that correct?
Yes. Keep in mind there's two types of board members. There's the type that is interested in taking care of their property. It's considered a public service. And there's the type that never got elected to student body government in junior high school. And this is their chance of power and glory. Okay? Unfortunately for the latter group, the standards apply to them too. Okay? In the back there was a hand.
You mentioned excluding reserve funds from the GSA when you're getting a loan.
I always do, yes.
How do the lenders look at that when the condo corporation has the ability to hide funds that can't be accessed by the lender in a liquidation or a collection process?
Well, everyone here knows it's very, very easy just to fill that reserve fund with lots and lots of money, right? No. I've never seen a problem with a lender because it's a statutory fund. And it's usually in these situations it's nowhere close to what they need or they wouldn't be going. So even if you didn't have, even if you did give them expressly that power, they're not necessarily going to be able to do it because of the statute. So most of the loan agreements that I see, they voluntarily expressly exclude it. And the few times where they tweaked it and I've said, I want to have something here which makes this clear, it's always been added. Never any pushback. There was somebody was twitching. Yes, right here.
We have a bare land condo. We've got a special assessment, or we're going to be borrowing money, I guess is what we're probably going to end up doing, through the county. The county's going to lend us the money to, we have to do
Really? Interesting.
we have 3 water wells on our complex in the bare land that supply our water. Alberta Environment has changed their regulations. Our water treatment facilities no longer comply with the new regulations. So now we have to put in 3 new water treatment systems. So the county, right now, we're just in the process of working with them, but they're agreeing to lend us the money through the county at the county's interest back to us. Now, we collect condo fees on per unit, not unit factor. Now, when we built our sewage lagoon, the county helped us out with that one too, and we had an opt-in, opt-out on that one.
Okay.
So I'm wondering about what you had mentioned about opt-in, opt-out on this one. And you said that the interest was going to come out of your general operating fund for...
Well, no, the repayment of a loan
Yeah,
is paid for by the corporation.
by the corporation, yes.
And how does the corporation get its money?
Through
It's
condo
from
fees.
condo fees. And
Yes.
condo fees go into your operating account
Operating fund,
until they're
correct.
allocated into your reserve.
Yes,
Okay, so your reserve fund can only be used for specific purposes.
correct.
You can't use your reserve fund to pay a loan.
No,
It's not one of the approved things that you can use.
yeah. But if you have somebody who opts out of, or opts in, opts out, what do you want to call it? You're opting in to pay for your share of this loan. But this
Yes.
loan is amortized over 20 years.
Yes, with interest.
Yes. So that interest comes out of the operating fund, you were saying, right?
Yes, it comes out of the
Yes,
operating
okay,
fund, but
yep.
you need to then calculate, because if someone's already paid out their share of putting in your 3 wells,
Yes.
they need to be paying, they should assume they're paying less than the person beside them who didn't.
You're correct.
And so the person that's paying more, you need to figure out the cost of repayment of the loan, plus all interest,
the
plus all
interest.
fees.
Oh, okay.
And then you take
okay.
that bucket and you divide it up
Yep.
proportionally as required, either
Right.
equally or on a unifactor basis, but only amongst those people that are participating.
Right.
So you end
the
up with
opt-in.
2 different classes.
Yes.
People that have prepaid and people that haven't. And that's your structure of the opt-in, opt-out. That's the reason why I'm a big fan of get it in the bylaws.
Yeah.
Okay?
Our-
If you kind of structure this thing as a, well, I'm just not a fan of the other way.
Yeah.
Is that clear?
Our bylaws are very silent on any kind of loans, so
It's
we've got nothing in our
A
bylaws
lot of
for
other
that.
people do it a different way.
Yeah.
And so it's a concern for me because you issue special assessments and so-and-so still has to pay it. And so it's an outstanding special assessment, but there's been sales and clear estoppels and
Right.
I don't like to touch it.
Yeah.
Just put it in the bylaws. And so in your situation, if you're looking at a new loan, what I'd recommend is, we'll put in that language. Put in specific language to address that for both current and past ones, or your proposed and your past one. And it makes it very clear, you should never default, right?
No.
But in the event you do, you don't want to have the fight, and you want clarity. And provide certainty to those that have paid.
Yeah.
Going once? Garrett is really slow, so hoppity, hoppity, hoppity. Let's pick up the pace here, Garrett.
So if I understand correctly, with the new regulations, a more stringent bylaw is valid, but a less stringent bylaw is in conflict with the regulations and can't be relied on. For example, right now the corporation has the ability to borrow money without an owner's resolution at all. Effective January 1st, if it's greater than 15%, they would require a resolution of the owners. Is that correct?
Think about it this way. Most bylaws will have a provision in it that allow the corporation to borrow, and most talk about an owner's approval, okay? Ordinary or special. That will still be the case after these new regulations come in. Because if the bylaws state special resolution, you're going to have a special resolution per the Act. However, if the Act states at a minimum threshold that if you're borrowing more than 15%, you need owner's approval, then you need owner's approval at 15%. But if your bylaws state that actually it's lower than that we contract amongst ourselves, that we contract for a higher standard, I would say that's not conflict. That's a higher standard. Now, as to when something's in conflict versus owners just saying, this is what we want, depends. Here's another example. Smoking. By bylaw, can you prohibit smoking? Yes. Cannabis? Yes. Age restrictions? 55 plus now? Yes. Right? What about pets? Absolutely. These are things that are not referenced at all in the legislation, but they are set up in bylaws, contracts. So they're not in conflict with the silence. It's owners have decided we are going to hold ourselves to an additional set of rules and conditions. As long as they don't conflict, you have a problem. So for example, an object of conflicting would say, if you're borrowing more than 15%, you need owner's approval, but the bylaws state, no, it's 50% or 75%. You're now contradicting very really, in a real way, you're contradicting the Act. That would not work. So in any one of those situations, it depends. You want to look carefully at it. But in the specific example I gave you, if you have a higher standard which triggers, or a lower standard which triggers that approval, you follow the bylaws. Okay? When in doubt, ask the lawyer. And I'm not being facetious on that. It's just that if the lawyer gets it wrong, well, you can sue him. It's wonderful. I know, it's great, eh?
You're saying if it's greater than 15%, 15% of what?
The annual revenue based upon the last financial statements is what the Act states. But in all seriousness, if I had to guess, 80 to 90% of bylaws are going to specify what that approval threshold is. And 80 to 90% of them will trigger before the statutory one does. So just if you're looking at approving a loan, you need to look at your bylaws carefully. That's the rule. First step, look at your bylaws, and if there's any doubt after the board carefully considering it and talking to your manager, if there's any doubt, figure out who you're going to have to help you with the loan, with legal counsel, and just get them to confirm it. Okay?
Thank you.
The operative thing we like is it's enshrined the concept of owners approving loans. We like that. Last question. All right, and then we're going to give you, we're at 1:45, so this is the last. Was there any other questions? No, good. Last question. And then we're going to break for coffee, and you guys can go meet. Richardson GMP is looking bored, okay? They're looking lonely over there. Everyone afterwards, go talk to Richardson. Last question.
Okay, so just one thing to think about. So we've talked about opt-in, opt-out loans.
Yes.
So the challenge is you are told this is how much your special assessment would be, or if you borrow, you're borrowing at 7%, God forbid. Now we can do much better, but it didn't used to be. So the hidden cost, per se, is how much it costs to pay the lawyer and the management company and the financer, and those are sometimes a flat rate. So if you're saying, if there's only 5 in a room of 50 that do agree to do this loan because they desperately need it, and they're going to cover all this cost, they could be double or triple what the others would pay and not fully maybe understand that at the evening because they would cover all those costs. So how do you explain that without fully knowing it?
You explain it.
Okay.
So I had one like that where it was a small condo corporation, like 24 units, and it was about 2/3 of people that paid it out. But the remaining third needed it. And so my cost to do it would be, all right, guys, there's 12 of you, and the cost of the lawyer is going to be, I don't know, $3,000. And then is there another lawyer on for the lender too? You might have to pay another $2,500. And then there'll be a fee. And then whether you got a broker fee in there, this is all need to be figured out. So that's a great question. And any board that is looking at that type of situation needs to be clear to their owners, here is what this would look like. But even that option, when you stretch it out, is a lot easier for most people than I've just lost my home.
Okay.
But it's a very, very good point and a very good question, because what the people that are being given those costs, what they're given is all of the costs of the loan. Because the people that have paid it out, they don't want to pay interest. They don't want to pay the cost of setting it up. They don't want to pay a broker fee. They don't want to pay extra management fees if there's any that have been negotiated. None of it. Okay?